We're coming in hot with 2 big gameplay updates. More augments for Viktor and more utility for Soraka. Welcome to Patch Rundown 417. What's up, Summoners? MsPudding here to walk you through the big changes in Patch 417. Today we're talking about champion updates. Click on the links here if you want to skip to a portion of our discussion. So, Viktor's continuing his glorious evolution with some pretty neat changes that make his playstyle more customizable. You can now augment all the things. Actually, all of his abilities if you've got the gold. Soraka's got a pretty big update with this patch as well. Her ultimate's still the same, but her kit comes packed with new risk and reward mechanics. 417 also comes with some smaller changes as well. Garen perseveres even harder, regenning faster as he levels up, and LeBlanc's getting a bunch of passive tweaks so she can be trickier with her illusions. We changed how champions interact with player-made terrain last patch, but we kinda forgot about Nautilus. Luckily, you guys noticed, so we've updated the big guy, meaning he can now dredgeline his shiny metal ass to Cataclysms, Anivia Walls, and more. Finally, we've got some minor nerfs for Maokai, Nidalee, Talon, and Tristana. Check the patch notes for specifics. Since we've got 2 champion updates this patch, we brought in Scarizard from the gameplay team and Seb and Scruffy from Champion Updates to talk about the changes and give us some insight into the champion update process. Thanks for being here.
Hi, thank you.
So before we get into Soraka and Viktor, I kind of want to look at champion updates as a whole. When we approach any champion for an update, what are we focused on doing with that?
So this is actually a change that the team has been trying to make over the past year, and the changes are finally starting to hit players. We used to separate completely like visual changes and gameplay changes, and like give things to players piecemeal.
Yeah, we worked on a much lower level too.
Yeah.
Like everything was like solving small problems or some little improvements.
And at this point, we're trying to merge these things to deliver like Soraka like champion value, which is across gameplay and effects and art and all these
What do you mean by
things.
champion value?
So when we think about what champions are, they're more than just the gameplay or the art or anything like that. It's a combination of all these things put together to be more meaningful than just the things in isolation. And so that's why we are starting to update champions not in isolation. We're trying to do as much as possible across the 3 things that make them unique.
Yeah, every champion, we want to support their unique identity. We want to accentuate their strengths and weaknesses. We want to, make art and sound and all these things come together into a better, quality package.
Yeah, I think in the past, we may have even underestimated in some cases the effect that having a brand new shiny particle or like a really cool sound just living in the world can be, right?
Sure.
Like currently the difference between like old Karthus Wall of Pain, which was like this dinky looking thing, and now seeing this like epic tombstones rise
so
and
scary.
things like,
Again,
like
the souls.
if you think about it just from an experience, like that's way cooler
Sells
and
it,
kind of upping our level of game in this department, right? If you look at what we're doing across design holistically, right, especially over with live gameplay, changes that we have coming this patch, we have the Garen passive change and we have the LeBlanc passive change. These are changes that kind of reinforce their identity and push their gameplay further in that direction, and maybe we're not quite at the champion update level and we're not really rocking the boat too hard, but we're saying, what is LeBlanc about? She's about actually being a deceiver and moving around and blinking, so let's give her that cool passive. Or Garen is about charging into front lines, so let's let him regen and be tankier, right? Things like that.
We want to emphasize every character's some characters don't even have this, and so in the bigger, kind of more extreme cases, we might have to find something new or find something that they can build from.
So is that where we start to see the more, like the bigger changes to the kits, like with Soraka?
Well, in a way, Soraka has always hinted at what she wants to be, right? This premier League of Legends healer, but we had just never come even remotely close, I think, to executing on that, and she had sort of fallen into the same space as a lot of the other characters with heals in the game.
So why don't we actually take a look at what Soraka's changes are? So her passive is all new. It makes her move faster when she's moving towards low HP allies. Her heal now costs HP and has a really low cooldown, so she can kind of rapid fire it. Since she's hurting herself with that, her Star Call heals her when she hits enemy champions, and you can see it's a smaller AoE.
It's got a sweet spot, too.
Her E hits an area. Now it's not targeted, and it silences you when you exit the circle, and then roots you if you stay in the circle.
It actually the whole zone silences the entire time while you're in it.
I'm never gonna get out of that. I'm just gonna look at it. I'm gonna be like, this is so beautiful.
This is so
Oh God,
shiny.
I'm
Let
dead.
me stand right here. Perfect.
Now I can't move.
So Soraka, like when we were looking to like make this update, the high level goal was pretty apparent, and like it seems to be everything about Soraka was pointing towards we want this to be the healer. We want this to be the premier healer of League of Legends.
Well, now
but
she
this
heals a lot, like very frequently.
She does. Her healing output would eclipse every other character with a heal in the game, and this is not something that we had been able to accomplish in the past, and we honestly avoided it because it was problematic, right? If you just gave a support character like Sona or Nami or old Soraka a really powerful, really low cooldown heal, they would sort of flatten out the game in a bad way. Everything would be
They would negate all of your good plays, right? Like you make an amazing play in lane, you get a great trade-off, and then Soraka's like, yeah, I just healed him and gave him full mana again.
Right.
So,
Also, you're silenced and dead. Right. Like that's
Right. I mean, it led to boring games, right? It was not interactive with the enemy team, so she'd play very passively and still potentially win or lose. And so, we had to ask this hard question of what can we do to let this character go over the top with her healing?
Yeah. Or speaking of boring lanes, right? Like if we look back to the top lane or the mid lane Soraka that was being played a little bit earlier this year, right? They're known for just building full tank, shoving the wave. There's nothing you can do. You can't even get close to them. And then when team fights come around, they're just like a brick. They just like walk around and they're like, I heal you, and it felt like it was really, really difficult to
Kind
interact.
of passive play as well. And so
Passive aggressive play?
Right. But I mean, not at all what I was going for, but that's okay. But so like when we were like looking to give her all this healing and push the interaction and the risk and the excitement in the game, we finally came to this model of like, oh, she can heal extremely fast, extremely rapidly, extremely, she has a really, really high healing output, but it costs her own health. And the only way for her to stay in the fight and to keep going is to hit, her spell on the enemies. And so it's like this sort of engine that's driving her to like do some healing, re-engage in the fight, do some healing, re-engage in the fight.
Hit him with a star call, kind of be away, and the risk is definitely there.
But there's also some trade-offs too, right? Like we took away the ability for Soraka to heal herself, and a lot of players are concerned that she's not going to be able to solo lane anymore and be able to do that battle mage Soraka build. Why do we get rid of that?
So our goals, like the priority for this champion update with Soraka, was to make her the premier healer, and like as I understand, there's some dangers in making a completely self-sufficient healer that can operate by herself, right?
Yeah.
Well, she is
I mean,
healing
how
every 2
can you
seconds.
be a strong healer for your team if you're also too strong of a healer for yourself, right? That power is naturally going to be multiplied when there are more people to heal. And so even though we don't explicitly want her not to go to a solo lane, she's just better when she's with her teammates because that's what she does.
Yeah.
She supports her team and she helps them win.
Why don't we contrast Soraka's big gameplay update with Viktor in the sense that he didn't actually get a lot of changes to his basic kit, but we allowed him to augment everything. Why don't we go ahead and look at what some of the new augments look like? So the Q gives him a speed boost now when it's augmented. W pulls you to the center of the circle if you get stunned. And the augmented E no longer does damage over time, it does a second explosion. When you upgrade all 3, your ultimate has a faster move speed.
It's a nice little thing to top you off once you've finished
the ultimate
evolving.
evolution.
Yeah, I think it's called the perfect text core.
Right, but like how do we come to the decision to keep his kit basically the same and then just build on his augments?
Yeah, so it's definitely true that these 2 gameplay updates, they're being released at the same time, but they've got completely different scopes because they've got different goals in mind. On a higher level, we're thinking about our goals. We have 3 goals on the team. It's like, yes, we want to execute on champions better. We also want to make them more distinct and more cohesive. So Soraka, for example, we're prioritizing the distinctness. We're trying to make something completely new and specialized in League of Legends, that premier healer. Yeah. With Viktor, we're focusing more on the execution. He already had something very special going on for him, but it just wasn't satisfying enough at the time. And like he does look cool, and there aren't that many champions that are designed in that fashion, but his execution is a couple years old at this point, and we can fulfill that fantasy a little better.
Viktor players for a long time have really felt this kind of pain of, I make my one decision on my augment, randomly throughout the game. I pay gold for it, and then I feel like I get outscaled. Where, right, we have Kha'Zix, who comes along and is like, oh, I can change many of my abilities at many points in the game, and everyone's like, right, why can't we do that? Or like
the whole game feels like a big
Right, but
curve with
at the same
or-
time, I also feel there's kind of a strategic choice when you're playing Victor. You're like, this game, I'm going to augment my W, and this is going to, my playstyle is going to center around this. Whereas in another game, you might go your laser.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. But the point was, there's only one strategic choice that you get to do one time.
Yeah.
At this point, like, yes, you still have the strategic choices of, should I buy my needless or should I upgrade my thing and get boots or something?
Right.
And you can get it more and more throughout the game.
Right,
Yeah.
we're not trying to remove, well, even though that specific choice that he used to have is different, it's not necessarily removed. We're giving him new choices, right? It's about the order, like what order am I augmenting in, and when do I buy them? Because I still have to compete, my augment has to compete with my normal item.
Yeah, I think that like when we think about Victor, like we mentioned before, the priority was better execution. And if we just did a Kha'Zix thing or just did made it a trinket like Rengar, I think we actually start losing distinctiveness.
Yeah.
Totally.
So I think that when you want to make Victor more distinct and better executed on his current distinctiveness, like Kha'Zix is the one, and it makes sense. He naturally evolves over time, right? He's this evolving predator.
Absolutely.
And Rengar, like, yeah, it literally is a trinket to him.
Yeah.
But if there's gonna be one character who actually brings different tools to the fight that no one else knows how to use or understand, that's gonna be Victor.
Yeah.
And ultimately, for somebody that is, like, outfitting himself with a third arm because 2 arms wasn't enough for him, it makes sense for him to not be a 5-item character, but to end up like a 7, 8-item character.
So introducing Soraka and Viktor with this patch, does that mean that we delayed other champion updates? I mean, there's a lot of players that are like, where's Poppy? Where's Urgot?
Right, so
what's going on there?
I'm sure players have noticed that there's been a lot of champion updates, more so recently.
Yeah.
And that's because we started to find new ways, like workflow-wise, pipeline-wise, to get smaller scope things out. If we take Renekton for an example, if we were to do the full VU, like with VO and everything, it would have taken months for us to produce, and we probably would have put them behind characters like Sion and Poppy and Urgot and all this stuff. So every champion needs something different, basically. And for example, in Victor's case, like, we think that a lot of his distinctiveness is already there. He just needs to be executed a little better. Yeah. And so we've kind of parallelized a lot of this work such that we can afford to do smaller scope things like Viktor and Soraka. Soraka's larger scope than Viktor, but still much smaller than someone like Sion. At the same time, to make sure that over time, even though projects like Karthus and Sion take quite a while to make, we're still delivering good value to other champions. Ultimately, what we want to do is deliver champion value, and by champion value, I do mean across gameplay and art and the thematic and everything, very regularly to try to get to as many champions as possible, so everybody gets their champion, like, upgraded.
All right, thanks for coming out. That was a great discussion. We'll be back in a couple of weeks for patch 4.18. Check the link below if you have any comments or questions for the next patch. Thanks for tuning in.